Hey guys, welcome back to F1 Survival Guide. So for those who don't know me, my name is Sam Kwan. I'm the F1 from West Midlands Central Deanery. I'm currently working at Birmingham Highlands Hospital. I'm also the course director for this teaching program. Today again, we have got Shafari. She's going to be F1 in August. She is also the web moderator for this teaching session. So Shah, do you want to say something to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name's Shah. Like Sam said, I'm going to be working as an F1 from August. So if you have any questions at any point, you can pop them in the live event Q&A, and then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So we'll answer all those questions as well. We've got some exciting conversations coming up.
Thank you very much, Shah. Today, we are lucky enough to have actually 3 guest speakers to come and join us. So the first one, she's an ITU nurse at Worcestershire Royal Hospital, as well as a lecturer at University of Worcester. So let's welcome Miss Tanya Wright. Tanya, do you want to say something to introduce yourself?
Yep, hi, my name's Tanya. I'm a staff nurse at Worcestershire Royal Hospital, as Sam said. Yeah, a bit of background. Been qualified for about 4.5 years. My background is surgery, the surgical ward and surgical HDU. I've just recently got a job on ITU, and I'm also an associate lecturer at Worcester. So yeah, looking forward to a bit of conversation a bit later.
Okay, thank you, Tanya. So finally, so last time I received a couple of questions about working hours and contract. So I've invited 2 representatives from BMA to answer all these questions. So their names are Liang and Melanie. So I'm going to pass it on to them to talk to you guys briefly about all these issues, and then they will introduce how BMA can help you guys in this matter. So now I'm going to pass it on to them.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks very much. Okay, so by way of introduction then, it's Leanne Denton here. I'm one of the BMA local membership managers. And I'm also joined by my colleague Melanie Sutton, who is a regional coordinator for the West Midlands and also an industrial relations officer for some of the trusts in the West Midlands as well. So we're here tonight really to answer any of your questions that you have about BMA related topics. Could be anything to do with your employment or your experiences so far. So just to kick things off, and I don't plan to talk for very long because you'll have plenty of things that you want to ask us, no doubt. A reminder, first of all, BMA being your trade union and professional association. So there will be members amongst the audience that we're talking to tonight, and there will be some non-members as well. If you're a non-member at the moment, the good news is that you can join for free right now up until the 30th of September. So I would definitely recommend that you make the most of that free membership whilst it's available. And I don't know which direction I'm going to point in now. Is it that way or is it that way? But you'll be able to see behind me that there is a joining link. If you are not currently a member and you would like to join and make use of the free membership until the end of September, please use that link that you can see hovering behind me, www.bma.org.uk, and then it's /join 5500. And what I'll do afterwards, I'll just write it into the chat window as well. But whilst I'm talking, you'll be able to see it behind me. If you are already a member, great. Don't worry, though, that you feel like other people are getting free membership. We've waived your membership fees up until the end of September as well. So magically, you won't be paying any fees until the end of September. So what can we do for you then during that time? Well, as your trade union, we're obviously here to support you with any kind of employment related issues. So contracts, first of all, you're all new F1s, so you're all in brand new posts. Probably most of you graduated early. You're all in a completely new situation, new work environment, everything very confusing and complex. So one of the things that you will have been asked to do quite early on is sign a contract of employment. So BMA, one of the services that we offer is a contract checking service. Now, there's a few different ways that you can get in contact with us about this. There's a phone number, which is 0300 123 1233. So you can call us if you want to talk to an employment advisor about checking your contract. You can also email us, support@bma.org.uk, nice and easy. The other way, and this is a really popular way of getting in touch with us at the moment, is on the web chat function. So if you log into the website, you can be having a chat with an employment advisor online as well as doing something else at the same time. Probably you'll be quite busy at work and you might just have a couple of questions that you want to ask us, and you can use the web chat function to do that. So don't worry about making a note of all of that now. If you haven't got a pen and paper to hand, I'll put it all into the chat window so that you've got all of those links and phone numbers. So you'll have had a contract early doors. Make sure we check that for you. Also, what else will be new to you? Your rota will be a new experience for you. There's a couple of ways you can submit that to us. Either use the online rota tool, so you can actually do that and go through that yourself, or again, you can get one of our employment advisors to have a look at that for you. And the reason we check your rotas for you is to make sure that you are still able to take your leave entitlement, take your training entitlement, and so on. It also is a way for us to check that you're not doing too many nights in a long run or too many weekends in a row or anything like that. So again, submit your rota to us as well as your contract for us to take a look at. Something like 80% of the contracts and rotas we checked last year in 2019 were not compliant with the national model. So it's definitely worth having an employment advisor take a look at those for you. Something else, pay slips. So you might have already had your first pay slip, very exciting. Again, we can check the content of your pay slip for you, make sure you're being paid correctly, check pay scales, that kind of thing as well. So those are the three things that I would definitely recommend that you send in to us very, very soon. So join up. If you're not already a member, you can do that straight away within 5 minutes. If you already are, send in those three things: contract, rota, and a pay slip for us to take a look at. Other products and services that the BMA offers that will be applicable to you and you might want to make use of: the BMA library. Now, of course, with things the way they are at the moment, we can't lend out books, unfortunately, but all of the resources that we would normally offer online are still online at this time. Also the BMJ journal will come through to you on a weekly basis. You'll start receiving the BMJ. That contains all sorts of information, including jobs and all those sorts of things at the back. Learning and development is another element of your membership as well. BMJ learning modules, for instance. So if you go on the website, you'll notice that there's a whole list, a whole portfolio of modules that you can take part in and use for learning purposes. And those are clinical and non-clinical as well. So there you go. You've got the BMA library and the BMJ L&D offering as well to help you with your ongoing learning. What else? Specialty Explorer is a fantastic tool to help you in the future to decide what specialty you want to go into. So that's a kind of report tool that you can input information into, and at the other end of that, it will kick out a report and explain to you quite clearly why you might be best matched with a particular specialties. And you can do that as part of your membership up to 3 times in a year. So you can really put that tool to the test and see what data you can put in and what information it kicks out the other side in terms of what specialty you might be best matched with. And then there's lots of other services that are available to you as well as part of your BMA membership: CV writing, interview skills, workshops, financial planning as well. So we have partners, BMA Law and Chase de Vere, and they're always on hand. You can make an appointment with them and talk to them on the telephone or over Zoom. They're making appointments at the moment for you to discuss things like financial planning. So as a junior doctor, you might be thinking about getting your finances properly in place, and that could be things like paying off student loans, making investments, perhaps taking out your first mortgage and that kind of thing. So you can tell, hopefully, from what I've said so far, there are some real benefits to be had from being a member, and I would absolutely recommend that you join up and get the benefit of that free membership between now and the end of September. And you can see, as I said, behind me, that side, the join link where you can go and do that, and I'll pop all that information that I've just said into the chat window as well. So that's all I'm going to say at this time, because I think in a nutshell that is the benefits of BMA membership. Have I forgotten to mention anything, Mel, at this point, do you think? Anything else you want to add in?
No, I think that was very comprehensive. Hello, everyone. I'd just like to say hello, and I'm Melanie Sutton, the West Midlands Regional Coordinator. I'm also the IRO who deals with the West Midlands St Helens and Knowsley Lead Employer LNC, which is chaired by Suva. So I'm very much delighted to be here and hope we have a good hour. Thank you.
Oh, and do consider as well joining the West Midlands Junior Doctors Committee if you feel like
yes.
that's something that you would like to do. So if you feel as though you would like to be an activist, so bear in mind BMA has 160,000 members at the moment, so there's a real strength in numbers with your trade union. So if you would like to be an activist, if you'd like to join the Junior Doctors Committee, then perhaps you could get in touch with Melanie and take that forward. So I think that's all we're going to say for now, and we'll hand back to Sam just for the time being.
Okay, thank you very much, Leanne and Melanie. Thank you for providing us such a useful information. I've used the rotor checker once, and it's very useful. Remember to join the BMA. It is free until September. Okay, so let's begin our presentation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the last session. This session, I'm going to talk to you about how to handle your jobs well. This not only applies to your F1 years, but also when you are an SHO or when you're a registrar later on in life. This is a rundown for today. So for the next 10 to 20 minutes, I'm going to give you a brief introduction about this topic. I'm going to cover the normal routine of a normal day shift, on-call shifts, and night shifts. Afterwards, we will have got a 30 to 40 minutes Q&A session. So you can ask as many questions as you want to me, Tanya, Melanie, or Liang about the BMA. So let's begin, shall we? So I have divided normal day shifts into 4 sessions. The first one is before the ward round, and then during the ward round, after the ward round, and before you go home. So let's start in the chronological order. So to begin with, in the morning, make sure you go to the hospital on time. Ideally speaking, you should get to the hospital 30 to 45 minutes before the ward round starts, because you have got a couple preparation work you need to do before the ward round. When you arrive at the hospital, you go to your bleep box and grab your bleep. If your nice colleague has got a bleep, make sure you go and locate them and grab the bleep from them. And then it is a good practice to get a quick handover from them, just to know what happened during the night, and also what patient you need to be looked out for during the day. If they are very kind enough, or if they are very good, they will help you to update the list and print the list, or else, unfortunately, you have to do it by yourself. It's still your responsibility to make sure you've got the most updated list. You got include all the patients for the ward round, as well as you know where their exactly locations are. After sorting out the list, you can start planning the ward round route. I would suggest you start from your base wards, finish the floor, and then you can go and see all the other outliers. And if you have got a bit of time, you can start reviewing and preparing the notes, especially those for the new admissions, because when your consultant asks you about that, you need to know what you need to know, and you're able to answer all their questions. Sometimes, if you know some patient will need blood for the day, I would suggest you to submit a blood form request as quickly as possible to the phlebotomist to do it. Many hospitals nowadays have got phlebotomists coming in the morning to help the doctors do some blood tests. Unless you're very keen to do bloods, I would suggest you to just submit to the phlebotomist to do it. And also, they usually come once a day in the morning. So if you miss that, you have to do it yourself. So that's why it's important to submit that as soon as possible. And the last one, and it's also the most important part, it's going to be a recurrent theme. I put it in many slides. If you forgot all the things that I've mentioned during the talk, I hope you can remember the last point. So whatever happened, when someone calls you to see a sick patient, make sure you go and review that patient immediately. Drop everything that you're doing, stop everything you're doing, because sometimes you can't imagine how quickly a patient can deteriorate. Things might get irreversible if there's a delay. So that's why go and see your patient immediately when you get a call. So ward round usually starts at around 8 to 9, depending on the specialty. If you're working in surgery, usually start at 8. If you're doing medicine or pediatric, usually start at 9. When you get into the ward, make sure you get off the computer immediately. Many hospitals nowadays are using computers for blood test results, scan results, and also sometimes you can even enter notes in the computer. So that's why it's important to have a computer for the ward round, or else you can't go too far. So when you start the ward round, when you see the patient, it's important to invite the responsible nurse to join as well, so that they will know what happened for that patient for the day, and sometimes they can help you guys with jobs. Usually you go as a team for the ward round. So if you have got a couple of you guys, you can distribute the job among yourselves. So I would suggest one of you can do with the notes. You can grab the notes, prepare the notes, as well as present the patient to the consultant, and then be the scribe for the ward round. And the other one can be the computer guy, responsible for looking at the blood test results, scan results, prescribing the medication if you're using electronic prescription, recording scans. Don't forget to do the VT assessment for new admission patients. Many hospitals are very meticulous with that, and they will do an audit for that. And if you have got a spare person, the third person, the person can be a speculator, can start marking down the jobs. If your hospital are still using paper charts, that person can also look at the observation charts, fluid charts. If your hospital is still using paper prescriptions, then they can be the prescriber. It is important to ask while through the ward round to your if you have got a question for your consultants or your registrar. Don't leave it till the end, because you'll forget. And also it's important to clarify everything before you start the job, or else you're more likely to make a mistake. And don't forget, when there's a sick patient during the ward round, make sure you go and review that patient immediately. Ward round must be solved at that point. So some people ask me how to write a good ward round entry. So I've uploaded the template of my trust is using at the moment. So I'm just going to briefly talk through this template. So remember to put the patient details onto the top right hand corner, and then make sure you write the word ward round, and make sure you write the word specialty, which specialty is it, and then make sure you date it and you time it, and then you need to write who is doing the ward round. So make sure you include the grade, the last name of your registrar or your consultant, and also make sure you include your grade and your last name and your bleep number as well. It is important to summarize what happened to the patient during admission. So I usually start with issue or diagnosis. So I would write at the top, and then I'll write all the blood test results, scan results, just to give a brief summary of what happened. And then if it's a surgical patient, it's important to write what procedure they underwent recently and what's the post-op days, because that's important for the surgeons. And don't forget to include your news score, your observation, because it tells a lot about the patient information, and of course how many times have they got fever, how many spikes do they have. And then you can write what the discussion during the ward round out here, and then write a plan for the day, and you sign it. Different people have got different style, but this is just basically the recommendation of what you should do. So after the ward round, make sure you go over the list with your seniors, so that make sure you haven't missed out any jobs, and then you can start to distribute the jobs among yourselves. It's important to prioritize some important jobs to do first. For example, requesting scans, getting advice from another specialties, or referrals, because all these jobs, they've got time limits. So the next slide, I'm going to talk to you more about the common ward jobs. And then make sure you chase the results if you have done a blood test or you've done a scan, and escalate to your senior if there's a significant findings. So for a normal day shift, it's usually at 7 to 8 hour shifts. You are entitled to have at least half an hour break. So make sure you take the break. Usually during lunchtime, postgrad office will arrange some teaching or grand round for you to attend. Make sure you go there. It is important to go for your teaching log. I'm going to mention about teaching log for your next session for e-portfolio, but yeah, that counts your ARCV basically. You need to reach a certain minimum hours for your teaching. When you're free and if you're interested in your specialty itself, I mentioned during the last time, you should endeavor yourself to attend the clinics or theater just to get more exposure to that specialty and gain more experience related to that. And of course, when there's a sick patient, make sure you go and review them. These are the common ward jobs. So I have arranged that in the time order. So make sure you prescribe medication and request scans during the ward round. That will save you a lot of time to do things. And for some of the urgent scans, make sure you call the radiologist, get them approved or we call it vetting, and then you need to call the radiology secretary to get an appointment. For referrals, make sure you read the patient notes. Make sure you know the patient from down to end, know a bit well about what the clinical question you need to ask your colleagues to help, because it's very likely if there's a registrar or a consultant picking up the phone, they will ask you about these questions. For example, like observations, the blood test results, make sure you've got them, or else it's going to go back on you. And then you start doing the normal routine job, writing the short summaries, taking bloods and cannula, all these sort of things. So now I'm going to touch on a bit with on-call. So on-call shift is a bit different from normal day shift. Of course, not because it's got longer working hours, and also you need to do more things. The workload is more. There are different types of on-call. On-call could be a clerking shift. You're just looking after the new admission patient, or it could be a ward cover. Means you have to look after the patients on the ward sometimes for the specialty you're not even working with. I still remember when I was doing general surgery, I have to look after some urology and vascular patient during the weekend. So make sure you know what on-call shift are you going that day before you go in. Make sure you know the bleep number and make sure you know who to contact when you have got a question. When you got bleep from the nurse, you need to get the patient details, location, and ideally speaking, the nurse should hand over by using SBAR. For those of you who don't know what's SBAR, SBAR means situation, background, assessment, and recommendations. And you should ask all the questions you want over the phone, and then also you can instruct the nurse to do things over the phone as well if there's something emergency happening. If a patient is desaturating into 88, for example, you need to ask the nurse to give oxygen. It is also very important for you to have to develop a systematical system to mark down all the jobs, because sometimes you have loads of jobs for you to do. So what I usually tend to do is I have got a list, and then I'll write the patient initials. For example, a patient called John Smith, I'll write JS on which ward run, bay 1, bed 1, and then I'll put a square, and then that's saying that I haven't done the jobs, and I'll write the jobs on the right hand side. When I have completed the job, I will shade the square, and then just telling me that I've completed the jobs. And for some of the jobs, like taking bloods, and I'm waiting for the results, I would shade it as a triangle just to let me know I have partly done the job, but I haven't got the results, so that I remember to chase it. As long as you stay organized, things will be fine. And also prioritization is very important, especially in on-call, because you've got so many jobs. Make sure you review the sick patient straight away, and when you know and when you can predict you can't manage a patient on your own, make sure you escalate as early as possible. Make sure you get in touch with your seniors and also with your critical outreach team, so that you can get help as soon as possible, and patient harm won't be caused. And once you have completed something, make sure you document that onto the notes. It is important to you to document as detailed as possible, so that it will give some idea to the person who look at the notes later on, or it will also protect you legally when things go wrong. On-call shift is usually a 12-hour shift. You're entitled to have an hour break for that, so make sure you take the break. A lot of people, they tend to work straight away, and they don't take breaks, and they take breaks when they have completed all the jobs. I can tell you that that's not sustainable because I've tried that myself, and it is very stressful. So I would suggest you just to take a mini break, like in between, and then go back to go work. In that way, you'll be more efficient. And finally, before you're going back home, no matter you have finished a normal day shift or on-call shift, so it is a good practice to summarize everything 15 to 30 minutes before your shift ends. And then at that time, you can update the list, go over the list again, make sure you've done all the jobs, and then you can start planning what to hand over to the on-call team. You might notice that I haven't included review sick patient on this slide. That is because it's also very important for you to go home early, on time for your well-being. So that's why if the on-call team is around, then you should aim to hand it over to the on-call team to manage it. It's also a very good practice for you to prescribe all the IV fluid, insulin, and warfarin so that the night shift colleagues and also the weekend colleagues don't have to do it. If you know a patient needs blood in the morning for the next day, make sure you put out the blood form for the phlebotomist to do it, unless you're very keen to do bloods. And if it's a Friday, make sure you have got a weekend plan, because sometimes it might not be the same. It might not be the colleagues from the same specialty covering the weekends. So that's why it's important for you to have a weekend plan so that to give some guidance to your colleagues later on. So now moving on to night shift. So night shift is quite similar to on-call shift in terms of hours wise, but it's just in different sort of like time slots. I've recently finished on-call shift. I actually came off from nights actually yesterday morning. So what I basically do is I usually adjust my sleeping pattern the night before. So what does that mean? So what I usually tend to do, I usually either I sleep early, wake up early, and have an afternoon nap and then go to work, or I sleep late and wake up late and then go to work straight away. In that way, your body clock can adapt to what happened. Make sure you bring enough food and water, because I can tell you night shift is very tiring. So make sure you have got something for you to eat and drink to make you more energetic. So make sure you go to hospital on time so that you can locate a day team, grab the bleed from them, and also grab a quick handover so that you can free them to go. And also, it's a 12-hour shift. Make sure you take a break in between. Some people might ask me whether I should have a nap or not during night shift. I would say technically you're not allowed to do, but if your tiredness is affecting your work performance and that can compromise your patient safety, then I think it's important for you to have a quick power nap so that you can get more energized. Make sure you got your bleed with you so that when you got bleeded and you can attend straight away. IV fluid is one of the commonest job the nurse might ask you to do. It's supposed to be a day shift job, but sometimes it's not done properly. There are three things you need to consider when prescribing IV fluid. So firstly, you need to know what are the indications of the IV fluid. Is the patient dehydrated, or is the patient not really eating and drinking, or is the patient new by mouth? And make sure you're not overloading the patients. Make sure that you know is there any comorbidities with the patient? Do they have heart failure? Do they have liver kidney problem? And also make sure they have got normal electrolyte level before you prescribe. And after a night shift, everyone must be knuckled. So it's important for you to do a self-assessment to make sure you're safe to drive home. According to statistics, night shift workers are more likely to involve in accidents. So that's why it is important for you to know whether you are fit enough to drive home. If you're not, then I would suggest you either take a taxi or go for public transport, or ask a friend to drive you, or even you can take a power nap before you drive home. So it's important for you to drive home safely as well at the end of the day. So finally, I want to cover 2 useful apps for you to know. I would highly recommend you to download these 2 apps before you start your job. The first one is called Induction, which basically contains the directory of all hospitals in the UK. It is very useful too to help you if you want to do a referral or you phone the laboratory. It is more time efficient than you calling the switchboard and wait for half an hour before you get to the specialty you want to reach. And of course, BNF, I hope everyone know what it is. You can basically have a look and to know what the doses you need to prescribe for the patient for certain medications. And just to make you guys aware, I hope you guys are aware that there are 2 versions of BNF. One is called BNF, which is for the adult, and one is called BNF-C, which is for the children. They have got different dosage. So make sure you have got you're on the correct version when you're prescribing the medications. So thank you very much. That's the end of my brief talk. If you have got any question, make sure you can feel free to ask in the Q&A session later on, or just drop me an email. This is my email, sam.kwan@doctors.org.uk. And make sure you follow us on fy.medcast.com.uk. This is the new site that we have created that I can show you right now. So for the future session, you can just register down below by clicking this button. And also, I would fully appreciate if you guys can complete a feedback form while us during the Q&A session. So once you click this button, you will get into the feedback form. This is my feedback form. I really need your feedback for that. And also, when you click the Facebook button here, this is one of the group that I created for all of you, so that if you want to know all the updates and also we want to review the videos, all of these will be uploaded onto this group. Okay, so that's the end of my presentation. So now we'll open up for Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam. That was amazing. And thank you again to Leanne and Melanie for the BMA talk. So we're going to open the floor to questions now. So if you guys send them in, we've already got a few waiting. So I'll pose the first one to Leanne, if that's okay, because it's a BMA one. So let me pop you on live so you can answer it. So the question is the membership fee automatically waived if you are already a member, or do we need to contact the BMA?
Thank you. Yeah, very good point. And I only very quickly skimmed over this, but yes, it is automatically waived. So if you were already a member before we started to offer that the free membership, then yes, it will be an automatic thing. If it makes you feel better to ring the number or start a web chat using the information that I put into the chat window, just to make absolutely sure that we've done that for you, then by all means do that. But yes, it should absolutely be an automatic thing that will have magically happened. So I hope that puts your mind at rest a bit.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I'll pose the next one to Sam, if that's okay. So we've got one that says, if you get bleeped multiple times, what's the best way to manage this situation and how to prioritize, especially if there's multiple sick patients?
Okay, this is a very good question. Thank you very much for who is asking this question. So if you got multiple times, I would suggest you to, of course, drop down what you need to do, what's it about, what's the call about, and then you can, of course, you can do a mini prioritization. If there are multiple sick patients, I think at this case, you probably need to get some help. So you can, I think if you have got a couple of sick patients, you can ask one of your seniors, your SHOs, or some other colleagues to try to help you to sort it out while you're managing the most sick patients. I think in this case, it will be more efficient in terms of managing time-wise.
Thank you so much. And if I could just ask you another question, Sam.
Yeah, sure.
So we've got another one that says, when you first start as an F1 and you don't know the system very well, how much independence should you expect to have? And how reasonable is it to ask a lot of questions at the beginning?
Thank you very much for the question. I think it is very reasonable to ask as many questions as you want if you don't know. So as I mentioned during the last session, your trust should provide you with one induction week so that you can ask as many questions as you want to the previous F1 or to your SHOs. And at that case, since I know you guys are newly started, but at the end of the day, you're a doctor. So of course, like we all have something that we don't know, but it's also important for us to do our judgment at that stage. And if you don't know, then you can ask your seniors for help. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So just a reminder to you guys as well that we've got Tanya on the panel as well, who's an ITU nurse. So if you have any questions specifically surrounding, things like the role of doctors and nurses on the ward or anything that she'd be able to help with as well, she's here. I've got one question for you, Tanya, if I can interject with my own one. So I know we always hear about how, you got to make the nurses your best friend when you start on board because they're going to make your life easier. So what is your advice for how to actually do that? What would you say we can actually do?
Well, in a nutshell, in my opinion, your first day or even your first sort of couple of weeks as an F1, just be approachable, get to know the nurses, introduce yourself. It might take a while. There might be a lot of nurses if you're covering a few wards. Just basic, to be honest, good manners. Just introduce yourself. We are people behind the uniform. Just get to know us, show your personality, and if you genuinely have a question, a nurse would much rather answer your question than you maybe make an unsafe decision, or even basic things like where's the break room, what's the codes to the doors, where's the equipment. These are things that are very basic things but can save a lot of time. So that's what I would say is, just show your personality, and you're all working as a team. So don't be afraid to do that.
Yes, I think that's a very good point, Tanya. So I was, so going back to the last question, I think if you don't know the system well, why don't you ask the nurse? Because the nurses, they usually are ward-based. They know the system usually quite well. So if you ask them and nicely, they're usually very happy to answer the questions.
Definitely.
Thank you. So we've got a couple more questions for the BMA. So if I can ask you to come back on, Leanne. So I've got two questions here. So the first one is, if we submit our payslip or rota to the BMA and they say it's unfair or non-compliant with regulations, what are the next steps for us to take?
Okay, so what you'll have then, once we've seen that information, what you'll have is a very specific conversation with one of our employment advisors, and so they'll be able to give you advice probably over the phone there and then about what you should do next. We'll also follow that up with some detail in text as well. The important thing to remember is that we're here to intervene on your behalf, so we won't just sort of say, oh, you need to speak to one of your managers and let you get on with it. We're always there to kind of give you a bit of hand holding as well, so don't be fearful that we'll just finish off the conversation with this is what you've got to do. We will kind of follow that through with you. So every case that we open isn't closed until you've reached some sort of agreeable solution at the end. So yes, absolutely, I would submit the information that you've got to us, and then we'll provide you with advice based on your individual circumstances.
Thank you so much. And then the other question was to do with contracts. So what do people do if they haven't received their contract already?
Mel, is that something you want to just come in on?
Yes,
and what is the most course of action?
By all means, that is not an unusual situation by any means. But again, Leanne has put the first point of contact number in the chat line, which is very helpful. Get in touch, they will liaise with you, and they can chase the contract for you and deal with that for you. One thing that I would emphasise, which in response to this question and the previous one, is we are happy to advise you behind the scenes in that if you decide you don't want us contacting your employer, we won't contact your employer without your permission. But if you want us to contact your employer, then we will always do that on your behalf, having discussed with you what will be said.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to ask Sam the next question again.
Okay.
Had a couple about what specifically we can go over or revise before we start work. Is there any knowledge that you would recommend we go over?
So thank you very much for the question. Firstly, I wouldn't suggest you to specifically revise something, because I used to do something like that, and in the end it caused me stress out, and it's not very helpful at the end of the day. I still have to pick it up from the beginning. But I would say the Oxford Handbook of Foundation Year is very useful. It gives you a lot of information about how to manage emergencies, as well as what's a differential diagnosis, or what you need to ask if you what you need to do if you encounter a specific complaint, presenting complaint. So yeah, and of course there are also lots of websites for you to have a look on there. So I think, but at the end of the day, make sure don't get stressed out. There are a lot of people are here for you to help you, and because I think most of you, although I know most of you have started your interim year, you probably know the system a bit better than what I did before. It's also, I think people will still give you time for you to try to accommodate to the system, and also to learn about the system.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. So I'm just gonna ask our lovely BMA reps some questions again. So whoever wants to take it, Leanne or Melanie. The people are asking when we should expect to receive our contract.
Well, you should get your contract 8 weeks before you start a job, but I would say that we almost never ever see that. So you're not an employee because you haven't got that piece of paper. So there's nothing to worry about from that point of view. But obviously you want to send it to us to get it checked. So it really is a question of just getting us to chase it up for you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, yeah, a lot of people are in that position. I think especially me as well, where we haven't got a contract and you're just like, yeah. So Tanya, my next question is for you. So we've got one that says here, what kinds of jobs would be appropriate to delegate to nurse colleagues?
Yeah, so this is quite a big one. So it does depend on the area that you work in. So every area that you work in, each speciality of nurses will have their own set of skills. So most nurses should be able to bleed and cannulate. I wouldn't hold on to that though. It's not always possible. You know, some have not received training. You may have a ward where there's a lot of agency nurses. But yeah, so we can obviously do bloods. We can do cannulas if there's relevant training. Blood transfusions, BMs, OBS, neuro-OBS. So things like that really. And then obviously whenever you want to go and review a patient, I would always take a nurse with you to sort of, then you can delegate what you've done, update the plan, answer their questions. So yeah, so it's things like that mainly that you can delegate, and referrals as well, actually, MDT referrals. So doctors usually do specialty referrals in terms of microbiology or cardiology, but if say a patient needed tissue viability, or diabetes nurses, dietitians, physios, occupational therapists, a nurse can usually do that referral for you, and it's actually usually easier for a nurse to refer to those specialties. So yeah, so those are the kind of things that that we usually do.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tanya. And so that's why, as I said, it's very important for you to make a good friends with your nurse. Because imagine when you got stuck with a sick patient, and then you've got a lot of blood tests, cannulas for you to do, and you have got a very good nurse that are willing to help you, it will make your life completely different. And also a lot of nurses, they are actually very experienced. And I would say doctors are usually not the one that are the best in bloods and cannula, although we usually do most difficult cannula and bloods. Yeah, they can be very helpful. And of course, like for dietitian, diabetes nurses, all these are referral. I don't even know how to do a referral for this. So I think Tanya must be an expert for that. So thank you very much, Tanya, for your input.
Just in PPG as well. Sorry, we can sometimes do. Sorry, just to add that on there.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So another question that was coming up quite a lot was, what are the common conditions that you see when you're on call, and sort of if there's anything, as you kind of answered before, if there's any knowledge that you need specifically for them, but what common things would you see on call, Sam?
So common things are common. I know I'm not really answering your question. So the common things usually are like chest pain, abdominal pain, patient desaturating, neusing very high. So at the end of the day, it's just go back to your basic principle. So if you guys have done the iOS course or even BLS course, they must have mentioned something called ABCDE. So that stands for airway, breathing, circulation, disability, and everything else. So it is important you go through things systematically so that you don't miss anything. And then when you identify something, for example, if you identify airway is a problem, and then you, of course, you need to give some airway adjunct and then start on the anaphysis. If you identify oxygen, it's a problem, like the patient desaturating, of course, you need to give oxygen to the patient. And then if the patient is hypotensive, and then you need to just give a lot of fluid. So at the end of the day, don't worry too much. You receive a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if you go back to the basic principle A, B, C, D, E, you will do fine.
Thank you so much, Sam. So about indemnity. So if I could lump them all together, and I guess I could pose it to anyone really, because I think everyone's probably able to answer it. But the first question we've got is, what is the difference between medical protection membership and the MDU? Sam, would you be able to answer that for us?
Yes, sure. So basically, they are just different organizations. To be honest, they basically to do the same thing. They give you legal advice. I'm sure BMA also give you very good legal advice as well. So it's just quite similar to BMA. And to be honest, for the next session, we have invited MDU to give a chat about what they do. So I will leave it for the next time for them to answer. But yeah, I think they are basically the same. To be honest, for all these organizations. I'm not.
Sorry. And just another question that people are asking as well is, what kind of indemnity cover do we need as F1s? And does the NHS trust that we work for pay for this?
I'm not sure does BMA has got preference on indemnity and stuff. Do you guys do indemnity? If you guys do let me know. So the only thing I've come across is MDU. They were promoting in my medical school. That's why I decided to join. It's around £10 for a year. But I think there might be waivers. So I'm not sure right now. I'm sure for next session, if you for the one who asked this question, make sure you join the next session. All the questions will be answered from MDU. I'm not sure, is there anything to add from the BMA point of view?
Yeah, can I just provide a bit of clarity for those listening, actually. So BMA is obviously the trade union for doctors and medical students. So we're here to provide employment advice and support for doctors and medical students. What we're not, though, is indemnity providers. So we would always recommend that doctors take out a policy, if you like, with a defence union, and rather than rattle off all the defence unions that exist, I would encourage you to look into membership of a defence union organisation as well. We don't deal with, for example, patient complaints, so that is something that MDU, MPS, MDDUS and all of the other defence unions would look after on your behalf. So that's the distinction really between the two types of organisation.
Okay. Thank you very much for your clarification, Ian, for this in this matter.
So we've got another question that I'd like to give to Tanya. Someone has asked, sometimes when you write a plan in the notes, I'm not quite clear what is a nursing job or what should go on my jobs list. So for example, if I'm arranging a diabetic review, so what kinds of jobs fall within the nursing remit?
So as I said, this can differentiate between different areas, but the first thing you should just do is just ask that nurse. But what basically break it down is if it's a nurse to a nurse referral, then your nurses can do it. So if that can count as your diabetic nurse review, it can count as your tissue viability, it can count your district nurses. But obviously ultimately it'll be the F1 or a doctor to prescribe the insulin or any diabetic medication, which is why working as a team is so important. So have that communication. So the nurse can do the referral, a diabetic nurse maybe do the review and write a plan, but then it's just communicating between yourselves when the patient has been seen, and then obviously the doctor or F1 can update the drug chart or whatever needs doing. So yeah, so like I said, so if it goes to a specialist nurse, a nurse can refer. If it's another specialty, that usually goes to a registrar, like I said, cardiology, renal, respiratory, that's usually a doctor to doctor referral. But if you're unsure, ask your colleagues, ask your nurses, and I'm sure you'll find your way, and it just takes a bit of time.
So maybe let me just add a little bit onto this question. So generally speaking, usually for blood cannula, unless the nurse can do it, prescription is something that doctor must need to do. Writing TAT or discharge summary is something that a doctor must need to do. And of course, as Tanya said, referring to specialties, for example, like for cardiology, respiratory discussion, all these sort of things, that needs a doctor. But to be honest, pretty much all the other things, if you kindly ask your nursing colleagues to help, I think they are more than welcome. They are more likely to help. For example, for things like urine dipstick tests, for things like setting up fluid and stuff, these are usually nursing jobs.
Thank you so much, Sam. So I've got another question for you, actually. Can you talk through what happens during the shadowing period that we have?
So, shadowing period usually lasts for a week. Basically, it's like you're doing a normal day shift, but you're just following you're following the current F1 doctor to do their things. So basically, it's the same. You come in for the road run in the morning, and then you start following them to do the jobs. Depends on opportunities. I think they need to tell you how to do all the requesting, how to fill in the blood forms, and how to write a good discharge summaries, all these sort of basic things. And then depending on things coming up, if there's a sick patient, then you might be able to see how they're going to assess appropriately in this case. Yeah, that's it for me. Sorry.
Sorry.
That's fine. Sorry, I missed your question, I think.
Hello? Okay, yeah, I'm back.
Yes.
Sorry about that. So, yeah, so you know how you mentioned that, if you've got free time, you should try and go to theatre and clinic and things like that.
Yeah.
So people are asking, how much free time do you actually get to do things like go to clinic, contribute to research and audits, and also how do you go about actually getting those things?
So that really depends on how you manage the time, to be honest with you. So if you manage your time well, and if you can kindly ask your colleagues to help you to cover the ward, to look after some of the sick patients, and then to be honest, you will find out that actually you've got a lot of free time to do all these theaters and clinics. So during my surgical rotation, I've attended 2 times in the theater. I've heard some people they have got more time, they have got attended more frequently, but that's just because I just started the jobs and I haven't really been getting used to that. It took me a while to get used to the jobs. So I would say for the first 2 months, you probably need to just try to get used to the job, and then you can think of going to theater and clinics. And for research and audit that sort of thing, you just need to approach your consultant, or if you come up with a good idea, tell your supervisors, and then you just do it during your free time, or sometimes you got a bit of spare time during work, you can do it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. So I've got one more question for Tanya.
Yeah.
So someone's asked, what sort of questions should we ask when we're receiving a handover application?
Okay. So as Sam sort of mentioned in his presentation, the main thing is identify the patient, find out exactly where they are. You know, ward beds change quite quickly, so maybe just giving a bed or whichever isn't really the best way to locate your patient. This is where the S-bar is essential in terms of receiving a handover. Is this in regards to a deteriorating patient, or?
Yeah, I think if we could take it in the context of an acutely unwell patient, yeah.
Okay, so this is where your S-bar heavily comes in, so your assessment, your A to E. Another thing as well that obviously we can ask for information, which we don't always think about, is, you know, the patient's DNAR status. Do they have an advanced care plan? What is their CPR status? That we can ask that. Things like their observations. So what are their observations? When were they taken? Most likely they'll need an up-to-date one if they're being escalated. What medications are they on? So if a patient has chest pain, and you might think it's a PE, are they on Clexane? If they have a temperature, are they on antibiotics? Do they need changing? So things like that, really. I would get, and things like fluid balances, any IV fluids and things that they're on. It's things like that, really. I would, when taking a handover, I would specifically ask before you go to the bedside.
Thank you so much. So I've got a question for Sam again. So we had a couple of questions around the theme of when is it okay to ask a senior for help, and when is it okay to say that you need someone else there?
I think when you're struggling with something, or if the patient is deteriorating very rapidly, then I think at that point that you probably need to ask someone to help. So I think as I mentioned that before, just don't try to afraid of someone to help. So it doesn't matter what sort of nature of things. So you can ask someone to help if you struggle to take blood from a patient. Although taking blood, it sounds like it is a responsibility for everyone to do, but actually, if you think about that, we are all working as a team. That's why we always should help each other. When you struggle to do something, then you should always ask your colleagues to help. So of course, you try your F1 colleagues before you try escalate to your seniors, or for in this case. But regarding for sick patient, that sort of things. For example, if a patient is not really responding to fluid bolus, or if a patient is still desaturating despite with giving oxygen, that patient, if you think about this sort of scenario, that patient might need some ITU or HDU support. I think at this case, you have to involve the critical outreach team, and also of course your senior, because usually for ITU, they usually take a referral from a register, more likely from you as a F1. So that's why it's important to keep your registrar know what happened. And also at the end of the day, you're the most junior member of the team. And it is also the responsibility for your senior to supervise you. So why don't you just keep them informed about what happened?
Thank you, Sam. And just on the topic of the acutely unwell patient, we've got some questions to do with when is it all right if you've already escalated to a senior? Can you leave the patient then if you've got other calls that you need to attend to?
I would say as the patient is really, really deteriorating, unless you have got both patients deteriorating, I would say you can't really leave the patient alone, just because unless someone is here to look after the patient. So I think at least you need a doctor to be around the sick patient to look after. So as I said, if you have two, in this case, such an unfortunate case, then you probably need to ask your colleague for help. So either you ask your colleague to take care, the one that you already give or already managing, and you see another very, very sick patient, or you stay with the patient until you've sort out all the things or until someone takes over. Yeah, so that's it.
And again, just on the same sort of subject,
Yeah.
I think one thing that's quite scary for us is having that first acutely unwell patient that we're dealing with on our own. So do you have any specific advice for us on how to kind of prepare ourselves for that moment?
So it is, so I understand it must be very scary. So I started off with nice. So it was so, and I received some calls about some basic things, to be honest. But now I'm thinking of it like reduce urine output, that sort of things. So at that time I didn't even know how to manage that. But I think when you see a really sick patient, as I go back to, you need to go back to basic. Go back to basic. ABCDE is a very important tool for you to do your assessment. So make sure you do your ABCDE properly. And then if you identify a cause, for example, patient if having fever and having low blood pressure, then I think at that point the patient is very likely to have a sepsis, and then you need to start the sepsis 6, which is take 3 and then give 3. So I hope you guys know what is sepsis 6.
Yes, I think we do.
Good.
Thanks, Sam.
Just checking.
So we've had quite a few different questions to do with locums. So I'm going to kind of bundle them up together so that we can get the maximum out of you before we have to head off. So questions were things like, are F1s allowed to do locum shifts? What are the responsibilities that we have on locum shift? Are they different to when we're doing a normal F1 shift?
So F1, so thank you very much for the question. So answer your question, yes, F1 are allowed to do locum shift, but you are only allowed to do a locum shift as a F1. So basically what that means is similar to what you do as your normal shift or on-call shift usually, but you are just paid as a locum, right, in this case.
Thank you. And we had one question to do with sort of how do you find locum work as an F1?
To be honest, I haven't done a lot of locum work, so I've only done 2 locum works. Those 2 jobs were invited by my consultants to do because one of my colleagues was sick, and then they need cover for a shift, basically. So it's basically, to be honest, it's quite similar to my day job. I haven't even find any difference. It's just an extra shift for me to do. I would say that's probably what this what happened to from my experience.
Okay, lovely. Thank you guys so much. So I think that covers most of the main themes of question that we had. I will, if I could end with one question to Melanie and Leanne. Specifically, it's to do with the BMA library. So someone's asked when the BMA library is going to open up again.
Yes, it's a very good question. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we've got a definitive answer for you. We've been given the sort of 1st of September as the first time we're likely to be able to actually see our members. And of course, we're normally delighted to be able to go out and about and into the medical schools and into the trusts and into the training practices and so on to actually meet our members. But we're not able to do so at the moment. So we're fortunate to be able to use Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all of those good things to be able to engage with you. And so we're delighted to be able to be here tonight. But in terms of the actual library service, you'll be able to continue to use all of the online resources that are available for the time being. But of course, we'll let you know as soon as the physical library is up and running again, either by newsletter or we'll send a direct email. But remember, during your foundation years as well, there is a free postal service with the BMA library, so you can borrow, I think, up to 12 texts and journals at once, keep them for 3 months and then send them back in the prepaid envelope completely free. So there's no cost at all. It's all included in your membership, even the postage costs. So yes, we'll write to you when we know as and when it can open again, and then you can come if you want to and enjoy the members lounge and free coffee and such like as well. So.
Great. Thank you. Got a couple of other questions for you, very specifically, sort of like quick fire ones. So someone said, regarding payslip check and rota check, can we email support@bma.org.uk?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. And someone's just asked, are there any differences in contracts for those of them in Wales for jobs?
The Welsh contract is different, so I mean, but we will look and check either contract for you, so that's not an issue.
Thank you guys so much. So we've got, I think we've got a couple minutes left, so we'll just try and mop up any last minute questions that we're getting. Anything to do with locums, like Tuva said, we'll try and do like a special locum session so that we can answer all of them, because I know there's quite a lot of uncertainty around that. We've got a question about annual leave, how many days we can take consecutively. Could I pop that for Sam to answer? Sam, you're on mute. Just wanted to
mute myself.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes. So I think so. From my knowledge, you are entitled to have 28 annual leaves in total of a year. So usually they distribute as 9, 9, 10 in each rotation. So you either take it or you lose it. So basically what that means is like you have to take the 9 days annual. You have to take a 9 days annual leave within that rotation you are in, and or 10 days basically. You will get your annual leave time off in lieu if you are working during your bank holiday. I would say there's no. I would say depending on your supervisor or depending on your rota coordinator. So I know some work coordinator, they're kind enough to let you to have a couple of weeks off, but some they don't. So I think that really depends on the decision of your rota coordinator in this case. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. So I think we'll end just with the last one, which Tuva's kind of answered in the Q&A, but I'll pose it to you again. How long did it take for you before you became comfortable with being an F1?
So I would say for the first month, for every single job, you probably have to explore around a bit of the system, especially even though now I've been a doctor for like nearly a year. When I was changing especially from general surgery to pediatric in December last year, I have to spend a month just to search around the system, know about like what presentation do pediatric patients see, because it's actually completely different from adult medicine for this case. So I would say for each rotation, give yourself a bit of time, around a month, just to pick up everything, pick up all the system, pick up what you need to do, your daily jobs and stuff.
Thank you so much. So I think we'll have to wrap it up now as it's 15 past, but I just wanted to say a really big thank you to our lovely panel members, Leanne, Melanie from the BMA, and Sam and Tanya. Thank you guys all for joining us. We'll pop our information for our next session on our Facebook page, so please like that and fill in the registration form for the next one. And if there are any questions that we didn't manage to come to today, you can always message them to us and we'll try and pop them at the beginning of our next one.
So at the end, let me finish with my email. So this is my email and the website that I mentioned. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. It's sm.kwan@doctors.org.uk. And also I think BMA has posted their contacts on the chart, so I'm not going to repeat that. And make sure you follow us on fy.medcast.co.uk for the latest updates. And remember to do the feedback form. Much appreciated.